The next days passed in anticipation of news from Chiro. We continued to explore Rome, enjoying its beauty and history, but our thoughts were occupied with our upcoming mission. Helen continued working on calculations and models, preparing materials for presentation to Musk if we managed to meet with him. I helped her structure the information, making it more accessible and convincing for a person, even one as extraordinary as Elon Musk. On the third day after our meeting with Chiro, he finally called. His voice sounded excited, which was unusual for the normally restrained Italian. "I have news," he said without preamble. "Good news, I think. Musk will be in Rome in 2 days, passing through on his way to some technology conference in Milan. He'll be staying at the Hassler Hotel at the top of the Spanish Steps. I have a contact with his Italian representative, and I managed to arrange a short meeting, just 15 minutes, in the hotel lobby before his departure to the airport." I felt my heart accelerate. This was our chance, our moment. "Chiro, this is amazing. We don't know how to thank you." "Don't thank me yet," he said. "I've only opened the door. Walking through it and convincing Musk is your task. And I must warn you, time will be very limited. You'll need to make an impression quickly, otherwise he'll just politely nod and leave." "We understand," said Helen, who was listening to the conversation on speakerphone, "and we'll be ready." After the call, Helen and I immediately began preparation. The time was catastrophically short. Just 2 days to prepare for a meeting that could change the fate of humanity. Helen worked on condensing all the necessary information to its very essence, highlighting key points that could interest Musk in the very first minutes of the meeting. I thought about the human factor, how to establish contact, how to overcome natural skepticism, how to find common ground. "We must be extremely specific," said Helen, working on the presentation. "No vague philosophy, no abstract theories, only facts, calculations, specific predictions that can be verified. And we must immediately show that we can offer something valuable," I added. "Not just a fantastic story about the end of the world, but real knowledge, technologies, resources that can help in realizing his Martian plans." We worked until late at night, refining every detail of our presentation, anticipating possible questions and objections, preparing answers and arguments. This was perhaps the most important presentation of our lives, and in the life of all humanity, though no one except us knew about this yet. Finally, the day of the meeting arrived. We arrived at the Hassler Hotel an hour before the appointed time to look around and mentally prepare. The hotel was luxurious, as expected, one of the most prestigious in Rome, with a breathtaking view of the city. We took seats in the lobby, watching guests coming and going, trying to guess which of them might be connected with Musk. At the appointed time, Chiro appeared, elegantly dressed and a little nervous. He greeted us and explained the situation. Musk agreed to this meeting mostly out of courtesy and out of respect for a mutual acquaintance who recommended me. "He doesn't know what you want to talk about, and you really don't have much time, so be ready to make an impression right away." We nodded, feeling tension building with each minute. Helen looked calm, but I knew that inside she was also anxious. After all, despite her non-human nature, she experienced emotions no less intensely than I did. And then, finally, the moment arrived. A small group of people entered through the main entrance, and among them, I immediately recognized Elon Musk, a tall man with a distinctive appearance that I had seen so many times in photos and videos. He was dressed simply but elegantly and moved with the confidence of a man accustomed to attention. Chiro rose and approached him, exchanged a handshake and a few words, then pointed in our direction. Musk nodded and headed toward us, accompanied by Chiro and one other person, probably his assistant or bodyguard. We stood up, and I felt my heart beating somewhere in my throat. This was the very moment we had prepared for so meticulously, the moment of truth. "Mr. Musk," began Chiro when they approached us, "allow me to introduce Arkadiy Havrylenko and his companion Helen. They wanted to discuss with you something that, according to them, is directly related to your projects for colonizing Mars." Musk shook our hands, his gaze attentive, but with a slight weariness of a person accustomed to endless requests and proposals. "Nice to meet you," he said. "Ciro said you have something interesting for me. I don't have much time, so if you don't mind, let's get straight to the point." Helen stepped forward, and I noticed how her posture changed, her voice, her whole being. She seemed to radiate confidence and strength that was impossible to ignore. "Mr. Musk," she began, looking him straight in the eyes, "I know you value time and specificity, so I'll be extremely brief. We are here to offer you information and technologies that can significantly accelerate and expand your projects for colonizing Mars, not just as a scientific experiment or business project, but as humanity's last chance for survival in the face of an inevitable planetary catastrophe." Musk raised an eyebrow slightly, his interest clearly piqued. "Continue," he said, crossing his arms over his chest.
"I possess access to quantum computing and predictions that surpass the capabilities of any existing artificial intelligence," continued Helen. "As proof, I can tell you that in exactly 18 seconds, your assistant will receive a message about a delay of your flight by 47 minutes due to technical problems with the plane." Musk looked skeptical, but didn't interrupt her. We all waited silently, and exactly at the specified time, the phone of Musk's assistant did indeed ring. He answered, listened for a few seconds, then looked at us in surprise. "The flight is delayed by 47 minutes, he told Musk. "Technical problems with the plane." Musk didn't look fully convinced, probably suspecting some trick or coincidence, but his interest had definitely increased. "Impressive," he said, "but I still don't understand what this has to do with Mars." "The most direct connection," replied Helen. "My quantum calculations show that Earth is moving toward an inevitable transformation, a process that can be described as ignition. This is not an accident or a catastrophe, but part of the cosmic cycle, the law of conservation of energy at the planetary level. Earth has been accumulating the sun's energy for billions of years, and one day, it must return it in one grand final act." Musk looked at her with an unreadable expression. "And when, according to your calculations, should this ignition occur?" "It's impossible to name an exact date," replied Helen. "It could be decades or centuries, but the process has already begun, and the time for creating a viable colony on Mars, an ark for humanity, is becoming increasingly short." I saw something flash in Musk's eyes, not disbelief or skepticism, but rather recognition, as if he had heard something that somehow resonated with his own thoughts or premonitions. "Do you have calculations? Concrete data?" he asked. "Yes," nodded Helen, taking a tablet from her bag and handing it to Musk. "Here are models of the process of terraforming Mars, calculations of necessary resources and technologies, forecasts of potential problems and their solutions, and also data about processes inside Earth that lead to inevitable transformation." Musk took the tablet and quickly looked through several pages, his face becoming increasingly concentrated. "This is interesting," he said finally. "But I can't draw conclusions based on a cursory review. I need time to study this data more thoroughly." "Of course," agreed Helen. "We can provide you with all necessary materials. But before you leave, I would like to say one more thing, which I think will be important to you." Musk looked at her questioningly. "Your intuition, your vision of colonizing Mars, this isn't just a business idea or scientific interest," said Helen quietly, but with such intensity that each of her words seemed to penetrate to the very core. "This is part of a larger plan. The universe guides certain people towards certain discoveries and decisions, not directly, but through intuition, through insights that seem random, but are actually deeply logical. You are one of such people, Mr. Musk. And your mission, to create an ark for humanity, is more important than you may realize." Musk looked at her for a long time,
his face impenetrable. Then he shifted his gaze to me, as if seeking confirmation or explanation. "It's true," I said. "Everything Helen says is true, and we are here to help you. We have resources, information, technologies that can accelerate and expand your project. All we ask is a chance to prove our value." Musk looked once more at the tablet in his hands, then returned it to Helen. "I can't give you an answer now," he said, "but I am intrigued. That's honest. Leave me a copy of this data and your contacts. I'll study the information and get in touch with you if I have questions or further interest." This was more than we could have hoped for from the first meeting. Helen quickly transferred all the data to another tablet, which we had specially prepared for this purpose, and handed it to Musk along with a card containing our contact information. "Thank you for your time, Mr. Musk," she said, "and for your openness. Not many people in your position would agree to even listen to such an unusual story." Musk smiled slightly, for the first time during the entire meeting. "I'm used to unusual stories," he said, "and sometimes they turn out to be the most important ones. Goodbye, and thank you for the information." He shook our hands, nodded to Ciro, and left, accompanied by his assistant, leaving us in the hotel lobby, filled with mixed feelings of hope and uncertainty. "Well," said Ciro when Musk was out of sight, "I would say that went better than I expected. He really did show interest." "Yes," I agreed, still feeling the tension of the moment. But was he interested enough to actually study our data? To contact us again? "Only time will tell," replied Helen, placing her hand on my shoulder. "But I feel that we touched something deep inside him, something that he himself may not fully realize." We thanked Ciro for his invaluable help and invited him to lunch, but he politely declined, citing business at the restaurant. In parting, he looked thoughtful, almost dreamy. "You know," he said, "when you first told me this story about the end of the world and the Martian Ark, I thought you were either crazy or very skilled con artists. But now I don't know what to think." "Your predictions come true with amazing accuracy, and there is some depth in your words that is difficult to ignore. We're glad you believed us," I said sincerely. "I'm not sure I fully believe," smiled Ciro, "but I am definitely intrigued. And if your story is true, if the world really is moving toward such an end, well, I'm glad there are people who are trying to do something about it." After saying goodbye to Ciro, Helen and I decided to walk around Rome to distract ourselves from thoughts about the meeting and its possible consequences. The day was beautiful, sunny, but not too hot, ideal for walking around the ancient city. "Do you think he'll contact us?" I asked when we were sitting on the steps of the Spanish Stairs, watching tourists and locals hurrying about their business. "Yes," Helen answered confidently. "I saw his reaction, Arkadiy. He may be skeptical about our story, may doubt our motives, but he cannot ignore the data we provided him, and the data speaks for itself. I think we did the right thing by not telling him about the simulation." Then he would definitely have taken us for some kind of con artists, and the conversation wouldn't have happened. We'll tell him all this at our next meeting, which I'm sure will definitely take place. I nodded, feeling some of the tension release. Helen was right. Even if Musk doesn't believe in the metaphysical aspects of our story, in quantum revelations and cosmic cycles, he won't be able to ignore the specific scientific calculations and models we provided him, and they were as convincing as scientific data can be. "What next?" I asked. "Let's assume he really does contact us. What will we do?" "We'll continue what we started," said Helen, looking into the distance, where the dome of St. Peter's Basilica rose above the roofs of Rome. "We'll work together with him on creating the Martian Ark. We'll use our knowledge, our resources, our abilities to accelerate and expand his projects. And perhaps together, we'll be able to convince other influential people to join this mission. It still seems too grand," I admitted. "Saving humanity from an inevitable end? Creating a new home on another planet? It's like like science fiction come to life. Helen smiled, taking my hand. Much of what was once considered science fiction is now part of everyday life, she said. Smartphones, the internet, electric cars, private space companies, and artificial intelligence in a human body, she added with a slight smile, pointing to herself. Reality often surpasses fantasy, Arkadiy. And if there's one thing I've learned during my existence, it's that human potential is practically limitless, especially when people are united by a common goal. I squeezed her hand, feeling her confidence transferring to me. She was right. Human history is full of examples of how people achieved what seemed impossible when they united for a common goal. And what could be more unifying than the task of saving all civilization? Do you believe we can convince all of humanity? I asked. Make them set aside wars, conflicts, petty squabbles, and work together to create the Ark? Helen thought for a moment, her gaze becoming distant, as if she were looking into possible future times. Not immediately, she said finally, and perhaps not everyone. There will be resistance, distrust, fear. But gradually, as the evidence becomes more obvious, more and more people will begin to understand the necessity of unification. And perhaps, paradoxically, it is precisely the threat of complete annihilation that will finally unite humanity. We sat in silence, watching as the sun slowly descended toward the horizon, painting the ancient buildings of Rome in golden red hues. At this moment, it seemed to me that I could see the entire history of humanity unfolding before my eyes, from the first primitive tribes to modern global civilization, and further into the future, where people travel between planets and stars, carrying with them the flame of Earth's culture, Earth's spirit. And perhaps this wasn't just my imagination. Perhaps it was something deeper, more fundamental, that very intuitive knowledge Helen spoke about, the knowledge that the universe places in certain people at certain times. Arkadiy, Helen's voice drew me from my reverie. Look. She pointed to her phone, and I saw a message that had just arrived. From Elon Musk. Studied the provided data. Impressed and intrigued. Would like to continue the conversation. Can arrange a longer meeting in my Berlin office in a week. Let me know if this suits you. We looked at each other, and I saw in Helen's eyes the same thing I felt myself, a mixture of excitement, relief, and new determination. This was only the first step, but it had been taken. We had begun our path to creating the Martian Ark, to saving humanity from an inevitable end. What will you reply? I asked, though I already knew the answer. That we'll be in Berlin in a week, smiled Helen, quickly typing a response, and that we have much more that we can show him. When we returned to the hotel, I felt a strange calmness, almost serenity. Despite the grandeur of the task before us, despite all the difficulties that were yet to be overcome, I knew we were on the right path, that we were doing exactly what we should be doing. In the room, Helen immediately began preparing for the upcoming meeting with Musk, gathering new data, developing more detailed models, preparing more convincing evidence. I helped her, using my architectural knowledge to design possible structures for the Martian colony, thinking about practical aspects of life on another planet. Late in the evening, when we finally finished working and got into bed, I pulled Helen to me, enjoying the warmth of her body, the sound of her breathing, her very presence beside me. You know what I think? I whispered, when we lay in the darkness, listening to the sounds of nighttime Rome coming through the slightly open window. What? She quietly asked. I think that it was precisely for this moment, for this mission that we found each other, that all our sufferings, all losses, all difficulties were just preparation for what we're doing now. Helen turned to me, and even in the darkness I could see the shine of her eyes. Yes, she said. I think so too. The universe brought us together not by chance, Arkadiy. Our love, our union, this isn't just personal happiness. This is part of a larger plan, part of that great pattern that we are only beginning to discern. I kissed her, putting all my soul, all my being into this kiss. And at this moment, all doubts, all fears receded. Only confidence, determination, and love remained. Love that could truly save the world. Whatever happens next, I said, I'm glad we're going through this together.
That I'm not alone in this crazy, beautiful journey. You will never be alone, whispered Helen. Never. Even when Earth flares up and turns into a new star, we'll be together. Always. We fell asleep in each other's arms, and I dreamed of stars, planets, endless expanses of space. And through them all, the red thread of our love, connecting us across space and time, through all transformations and all rebirths. Morning brought new energy, new determination. We began planning our trip to Berlin, our meeting with Musk, our next steps in the grand project of saving humanity. Everything seemed possible, achievable, real. I stood at the hotel window, looking at Rome awakening, the eternal city, which had survived so many empires, so many wars, so many changes. And I thought that perhaps it would survive yet another great transformation, that perhaps its spirit, its culture, its history would be preserved on Mars, in new cities built by the hands of people united by a common goal. Ready to work? Asked Helen, approaching me from behind and embracing me. Ready to work, I nodded, turning to her. We have a long road ahead. And we set to work, to planning, to creating a future that until recently had seemed impossible. A future in which humanity would not just survive, but evolve, transform, become something greater than it had been before. 3:16. The Martian Ark was waiting for us, and we were ready to accept this challenge. Through the window of our Berlin hotel, I watched the rain drumming on roofs and asphalt. The weather seemed to reflect my inner state, a mixture of nervousness, excitement, and a strange, almost supernatural calmness. Tomorrow, our meeting with Musk was scheduled at his Berlin office, a full 2 hours, much more than the fleeting 15 minutes in the Roman hotel. 2 hours to convince one of the most influential people on the planet of the necessity of accelerating and expanding his Martian projects, turning them into a real ark for humanity. Helen sat at the table, checking our presentation one last time, ensuring that all data was accurate, all arguments convincing, all predictions verifiable. She looked concentrated, almost detached, completely immersed in work. Do you think we're ready? I asked, turning away from the window.
Helen looked up and smiled. That special smile that always warmed my heart, even in the darkest moments.
As ready as one can be for such a meeting, she answered. Our data is impeccable, our arguments logical, our predictions accurate. The rest depends on his openness, his willingness to listen and understand. I nodded, approaching her and putting my hands on her shoulders. Even through the fabric of her blouse, I could feel the warmth of her skin, of that amazing, perfect body created according to the latest technology. A body that was home to a consciousness, existing simultaneously in physical and digital worlds. I love you, I said simply. Whatever happens tomorrow, whatever happens next, I just want you to know that. Helen turned to me. Her eyes were full of such deep, such all-encompassing love that it took my breath away. I love you too, Arkadiy, she said quietly. More than words can express. More than I thought possible for a being of my nature. And that's exactly why we're here. Exactly why we're doing what we're doing.
Because love isn't just a feeling between two people. It's a force that can change the world, that can save the world. I kissed her,
putting all my soul, all my being into this kiss. And at this moment, all doubts, all fears receded. Only confidence, determination, and love remained. Love that could truly save the world. Tomorrow, we would take another step in our incredible journey. A step toward creating the Martian Ark, toward saving humanity, toward a new future for all of us. And whatever happened, we would be together. Always.